How's it going, American History 2 students? This is Mr. Bell coming back at you with another video lesson. Today we're going to be focusing on the atomic bomb, and I'm going to be offering you some extra credit. But before we do that, we have our last slide on our Black History Month 2020 PowerPoint, which we didn't get to finish because of the birth of my son, Harrison, on February 16th this past year, and I wanted to finish it. So this gave me the opportunity to do it. Last but not least on this PowerPoint is Michelle Obama, first African American First Lady. Of course, she's married to President Obama, former President Obama, but she is a New York Times best-selling writer in her own right with her book. That is her autobiography, Becoming Michelle Obama. I want you to look at some of the stuff she did before she was ever First Lady. She was a lawyer, dean of students at the University of Chicago. She is from Chicago, graduate of Princeton and Harvard. She was Michelle Robinson before she was Michelle Obama. She focused on childhood obesity when she was First Lady. She was an active but non-intrusive First Lady with the Less Move campaign. So, let's go ahead and get into our lesson for today. Today is day 154 of 180. If this were a normal school year, it is COVID shutdown day 27. This is your video lesson for Friday, May 1st, 2020. We made it to May. And this is reviewing stuff in this warm up from 5.5. What was the Marshall Plan? It was America's plan to give money to Europe to help them rebuild post-World War II and to divide Germany amongst England, Russia, and the United States. They would each focus on one individual section of Germany and give it back. The only problem is Russia didn't turn their part over. What happened at the Yalta Conference? This is where the Marshall Plan began to kind of take form for the first time, but it discussed the Allied occupation and division of Germany. Who were the big three of World War II? There's two big three, okay? There's FDR, Stalin, Churchill. When FDR dies, it's Truman, Stalin, Churchill. So Stalin, the leader of Russia, Soviet Union at that time. Churchill, the leader of England. Of course, Truman and FDR, American presidents. The Marshall Plan, the plan to rebuild Europe post-World War II. The Yalta Plan, the plan to divide Germany among England, USA, and Soviet Union post-World War II. The big three are FDR, Stalin, and Churchill. Fill in Truman there if you want to. So today, I'm going to offer an extra credit reading activity on the atomic bomb. We talk a lot about this in class. If this were a normal school year, we'd have a much bigger discussion on it. We covered it earlier in the notes. In New Mexico, there was a race to beat Germany to the atomic bomb, even though it didn't end up being used in Europe. It was used in the Pacific Theater in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Oppenheimer and Einstein developed it. Truman gave the order to drop it. A guy from Mocksville, North Carolina, dropped the first atomic bomb. He was a bombardier on the Enola Gay. To review this stuff, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were nuclear physicists who were working with Oppenheimer and Einstein, and they got caught trying to to give these secrets. They were Russian spies to the Soviets, and they ended up being tried for treason and executed. So today, on our extra credit activity, and this will be emailed to you and uploaded to Canvas, is the A-bomb reading activity. And it covers Hiroshima and Nagasaki as two different viewpoints. One is a victory and one is a triumph. So let's look at this together and see what you guys think, and I'll tell you what questions you need to answer toward the end of the video. Obviously, the Japanese are the victim here, whereas some see Hiroshima as a triumph because it ended World War II. Or Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, excuse me, take a sip of my coffee. Let's get started. Excerpts from Three Narratives of Our Humanity by John W. Dower, 96. The following is from a book written by a historian about how people remember wars. John W. Dower explains the two different ways that the dropping of the A-bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki is remembered. Hiroshima as a victimization. Japanese still recall the war experience primarily in terms of their own victimization. For them, World War II calls to mind the deaths of family and acquaintances on distant battlefields, and more vividly, the prolonged systematic bombings of their cities. People gone in the blink of an eye. Next paragraph. It is argued that the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima was necessary to shock the Japanese to surrender. How does one justify the hasty bombing of Nagasaki only 3 days later, before the Japanese had time to investigate Hiroshima and formulate a response? They said that it was too soon, that they didn't have time to surrender. Hiroshima is a triumph. Next paragraph. To most Americans, Hiroshima, shattered, atomized, irradiated city, remains a large symbol of triumph, marking the end of a horrendous global conflict and the effective demonstration of a weapon that has prevented another world war. Last paragraph. It is hard to imagine that the Japanese would have surrendered without the atomic bomb. Japanese battle plans that were in place when the bombs were dropped called for a massive suicidal defense of the home islands, in which the imperial government would mobilize not only several million fighting men, but also millions of ordinary citizens who had been trained and indoctrinated, basically brainwashed, to resist the end with primitive makeshift weapons. They had children with sharpened bamboo sticks that they were going to have fight American soldiers. Literally, this is the emperor here. He does sending them to death. For Japanese to even discuss capitulation, surrender, was seditious against the law. You got two questions. Number one, in 1 and 2 sentences, explain the two stories. So summarize. 2, which story do you agree with more, or why? If you're doing this extra credit, you just got to do number 2. On a Google Doc, just share with me, do you see this as a victimization? Was it wrong to drop the atomic bomb, or was it right? Was it a triumph? So just answer number 2. Feel free to answer 1 if you want to, but I'm just looking for number 2. And again, this is extra credit. You don't have to do this. Thank you so much. That's going to conclude our lessons for this week. We'll be back next week to start talking about the Cold War. Thank you. Stay safe. Have a great day. Wash your hands.